It's the Smackdown Go Home show leading into WWE Hell in a Cell this Sunday. Hey everyone, I'm Denise Salcedo. Welcome to Smack Talk. Once again, I am filling in for Rick Ucchino, but no worries because my guest for today, my co-host for today actually, is Ryan Boman. What's up, Ryan Boman?
Back again to hang out with you for one more week.
Exactly. You know, we had such a great time last week. So I'm, you know, as much as I miss Rick Ucchino, I am happy to have you on here because I think we did such a great job last week.
Yeah, I fed off your energy. I had spoken to some of the other folks at Sports Tequila, and I said, she's so vibrant, it makes me feel like I'm young again.
Well, you know what? I'm glad to be of service.
Well, I appreciate it. And I love talking a little smack with you.
Yes, exactly. Smack Talk. We're definitely going to get into all of that. Before we get started, we do have some comments here. We have John Elite who says, oh my God, what an ending. We will get to that, but just sort of as a quick overlook, Ryan, how did you feel about SmackDown overall here tonight?
Well, I thought it was going to be, I'm more curious as to what the aftermath is going to be, how the ratings are going to be affected by them being on FS1. I thought that was the first thing I noticed is I'm pulling up my guide, my cable guide, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, where's the show? I had forgotten, that they were on a different network tonight because of the World Series. But, overall, I enjoyed the show. I thought, again, it's just such a contrast to Raw, the fact that this program seems to just flow so easily through those 2 hours, where Raw has become sort of a labor to get through. For some reason, that third hour just seems to make it drag on so much longer.
You know what? I don't blame you. As somebody that covers Raw each and every single week, there are some weeks that are a little easier than others. Like there are certain weeks that I enjoy more, but I will say that SmackDown really just cruises on by because it really is just a nice 2 hours. But I think overall, in terms of this being the go home show for Hell in a Cell, I thought they did a pretty good job today. I wasn't bored at any point throughout the show. I thought there was a lot of really good moments.
Yeah, I think SmackDown's definitely, out of all the brands, it's become the home of the compelling storylines. And you saw three of the biggest really play out right here tonight in this episode going into the pay-per-view. Was it an A-plus show in my mind? Not necessarily, but it certainly set the stage for this weekend.
Does it have you excited and looking forward to Hell in a Cell for you personally?
I know we're going to touch on a few of these. There are a couple scenarios. There are a couple of matches I feel like I'm 100% sure I know how they're going to turn out. But there's a couple, especially coming out of these storylines, that have been wrapped around the threads that have been wrapped around SmackDown in the last few weeks. Yeah, I am excited to see how a couple of these angles play out.
Exactly. And we have Philip Shaven, who also says, great show tonight. So I think overall people genuinely enjoyed SmackDown. So let's just go ahead and kick it off. We will be going in order of all of the segments because I just think that's probably the best way to go about it. So we kicked it off with the Kevin Owens show, the KO show, the first one on SmackDown since the WWE draft. And Kevin Owens had Daniel Bryan on as his guest. Daniel Bryan basically came out. He talks about what he sees is what he thinks is the future for SmackDown. He says that he wants young talents like Jey Uso and Big E to get a bigger focus on the show, to be highlighted, and also says that he wants the Intercontinental belt to be on the line, to be defended each and every single week on SmackDown. And then Kevin Owens kind of says to him, like, hey, we should be tag team partners. And it kind of seems like Daniel Bryan is a little bit on the fence at the moment. But as we do move forward, we see Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler appear, and they basically say that they are the greatest tag team, that they're the best SmackDown acquisition. After this, we see the Street Profits come out, and then we see Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro come out, and this essentially leads to a brawl, which then leads to an 8-man tag match. So starting from the top of the KO show to this match, what did you think about all of this, Ryan?
Well, I'm watching this, and as soon as Owens brings up the idea of them being a team, I'm thinking these are two of the great communicators in WWE in recent history. Only some good could come out of a pairing between the two of them, between the promos and the quality of the matches. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys hopefully be a tag team going forward.
Do you have a good tag team name? Because I don't think they're going to go with Team Hell KO.
No, I was trying to think of that actually as they were going through that segment. I thought, what would I call them? I'm not really sure yet, but I'm sure the marketing team in WWE will come up with something creative.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing too, is that like when I didn't necessarily think they were going to go this direction with Kevin Owens and Daniel Bryan as a tag team, but in a way I don't completely hate it because it, Daniel Bryan's, recently just came back. This is essentially his second week back. Kevin Owens hasn't really been in a big storyline. Like he had the whole thing with Aleister Black. He's been doing his KO show, but he's kind of just been there. He hasn't even had a pay-per-view match in several pay-per-views. So I think that, kind of teaming up with Daniel Bryan doesn't hurt him whatsoever.
No, and from a practical standpoint, it gives both these guys a little bit more mileage on their careers. I mean, these guys have gotten to a point where they're veterans now. Daniel Bryan went through a very serious injury that put him out for a couple of years. Kevin, obviously, he's been banged up and had his own. So, sometimes putting two veteran guys in a tag team kind of helps them also get over some of those nicks and bruises they've had over the years.
Exactly. Now, we have to talk about this match because this was really good. I thought this was a really, really great opener, a nice introduction into the tag team division, the now sort of existing tag team division that we're seeing on SmackDown in WWE. So I liked this match. I mean, it went quite a while. I thought all the teams did awesome stuff. The finish was great. I mean, how did you feel about this?
Really liked it, and I thought it was great that the young upstart team is in there with basically 6 veterans who could carry the match. Street Profits are obviously a team that the company is really tying their wagon to. But I did have one thing I thought of, and I thought you would get a kick out of this. Now that they're on SmackDown, shouldn't their solo cups be blue and be color coordinated with the show?
That is a good point, and I haven't really seen anybody bring that up on social media or anything.
But not to make light of the match itself. No, I thought it was great. Yeah. And I love, I'm one of those people that I love when these tag team matches get into turmoil and there's bodies flying everywhere. And I thought we got a chance to see that tonight. It was done well.
Yeah. For sure. Like the fact that you said, like, we got to see a lot of bodies thrown all over the place tonight. I mean, like, even just like the last few minutes of this match, it was like, boom, move here, boom, move there, boom, this, boom, that. And then leading into Montez Ford's frog splash, which was, I mean, I don't know about you, but it kind of feels to me that every single week he kind of goes higher and higher.
Yeah, just an amazing athlete. It's really, I see great things for him in the future going forward, but it's really a lot of fun to see that them function as a team, and the fact that SmackDown maybe, hopefully, knock on wood, is going to put some emphasis on the tag team division. Now that they're over there, we got a chance to see, 4 great teams tonight, and there's all kinds of possibilities in the future for that division if they decide to get behind it.
I'm really happy that you mentioned that because I do think that is obviously one of the things that they need to work on is that tag team division. I mean, I feel like they've got mostly everything on point except for that. So for them to start to kind of start it off the way they did for this SmackDown, I kind of have good hopes in terms of the direction that it's going into. Chloe says, I'm looking forward to the Hell in a Cell. Can't wait. So I would say that based on tonight's show and based on the comments that we're seeing today, this was a pretty good go-home show for Hell in a Cell. So after this, by the way, we did see the Street Profits win, which was, like I said, a really fun finish. But after this, we went into something kind of interesting. So this was, separated into different segments throughout the show, but we're just going to go ahead and cover the whole chunk of it all right now. And it was Law and Otis. So they're in a courtroom, and just about everybody and their mother showed up for this. We had Farouk in there. We had JBL as a judge. We had Miz suing Otis essentially for emotional distress, creating unsafe work environments, and Money in the Bank negligence. And this was the first time this was actually made clear to me because I think for several weeks I was a little bit confused as to what exactly the Miz was suing Otis for in the first place. The Miz says that Otis has victimized him and says he wants the Money in the Bank briefcase. Otis says he deserves the Money in the Bank briefcase because he won the ladder match, and Miz and Morrison end up firing their lawyer because their lawyer ends up agreeing with them. But this just doesn't stop from here. I mean, we see appearances by Rey Mysterio, Asuka, Teddy Hart, Tucker. I mean, it's nonstop. In the end, the Miz and Morrison, they end up buying off JBL and they go into the verdict. And now the match for Hell in a Cell will be the Miz versus Otis. And whoever wins this gets to keep the Money in the Bank contract. Wow, a lot happened. What did you think of all of this, Ryan?
it's one of those, it's the modern day version of wrestling. We just talked about there being a fantastic opening match, tag team match that just takes your breath away. And then they pull back into comedy, which has been a topic of discussion all around the internet due to other wrestling shows and some of the stuff they've done. It's been kind of cheesy and a little wacky, but overall, I mean, I think if you have to adjust to the modern day version. I'm an older fan. This is stuff that I don't remember, growing up watching. But watching this stuff today, if it's done right and it's done well, and anytime you get the APA involved in something, it's going to be great. So, no, I enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of Otis. So any way that they can help build his character and get him over even more, I'm down. Like I said, some of the stuff they do when it's the backstage vignettes, for me, it's a little hokey, it's a little cheesy, but I actually enjoyed Law and Otis tonight.
I agree. By the way, Ozzy, thank you so much for pointing out my error. I didn't even realize that I said Teddy Hart instead of Teddy Long. Turns out my autocorrect on my notes changed it to Hart, and I just read it that way. But yes, it was Teddy Long. So thank you to Ozzy for pointing that out to me. So you talk about the fact that obviously comedy has been sort of a central topic of discussion, based on what we're seeing, what we saw most recently on AEW and what we saw here this week with Law and Otis. So are you a fan per se of the comedy aspect of it, or do you sort of feel like you're only a fan of it if it's executed right?
If it's executed right. I mean, I think, again, as somebody who grew up in the 80s watching wrestling, 80s and 90s watching wrestling, where we were all supposed to take it so seriously, but at the same time, they were doing comedy skits back then. The WWF were doing comedy skits all the way back in 84, 85. The Tuesday Night Titans show was kind of a spoof. So really, to be honest with you, the comedy and the skits have always been there. They've just kind of made it a little more complex now. And, there's a place for it in wrestling. I believe it's a genuine way to advance the characters if done properly. If it's just slapstick and the guy slipping on a banana peel for no reason, then, no, it doesn't appeal to me. But if it's done smart and it's done in a creative way, then yeah, I mean, this is the modern era and it's here to stay. So you might as well kind of evolve right along with it.
Exactly. And see, you mentioned okay, if it's slapstick, he's slipping on a banana peel, something like that, you're obviously not interested in it. But if it's done creatively, you are. And I think that makes a lot of sense because I feel comedy is the thing that's kind of hard to nail for people because obviously not everybody has the same type of sense of humor, and something that's funny to someone just may not work for somebody else. So it's kind of a very difficult thing to sort of appeal to everybody because I can find something totally funny and the next person next to me won't, and vice versa.
Yeah, it's like that with comedy movies or sitcoms on television. It's, I think that's all the way around. I think wrestling fans have a certain appetite for that thing. And I think in a lot of ways, wrestling fans, because we've learned to be tongue in cheek and not take everything so seriously, you can't if you're a wrestling fan. I think that, we're more willing to accept things like that. I mean, it's presented like a sport, but at the end of the day, we all know deep down inside, it's not technically a sport.
Exactly. So Philip Shaven also says, interesting segment between Otis and Miz. Thought I was watching a TV show for a minute. So in terms of how they executed this, how did you feel about all of this?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I thought the sound effects, and the cameos and everything worked. I love Teddy Long, being in it. I just, to me, if they're going to do stuff like that, I always love the fact that they will bring back legends to do cameos and things like that, because it just it ties the whole, I guess, past, present, and future of the WWE universe together.
Yeah, I like things like that, especially because it's sort of unexpected. I wasn't expecting half the people that showed. I mean, aside from Tucker, I wasn't expecting anybody else that showed up to this on this. All right,
I wasn't expecting JBL to look so old.
Did you think he looked old?
Yeah, I think that he's getting up there in years, and it's getting obvious.
Yeah, I mean, right. It's bound to happen eventually to all of us. But I did think I thought this was kind of funny. It was simple. I mean, I think it could have been a little bit funnier. I don't think in terms of a lot of what I've seen Otis do in a lot of the comedy segments that he's been in, I don't necessarily think that this one was the one the very best, essentially. Like, there's been funnier Otis moments, like when they did El Gran Gordo. I thought that was even funnier than this whole Law and Otis segment. So I did appreciate that a little bit more. I did like the ending, though, because I posted on Twitter, like, there was a lot of layers to this in terms of like real life politics and all of that. Like, we won't get into that, but I kind of feel like there was a subtle nod to that a little bit there.
Yeah, sort of a nod to Wrestler's Court. You know, the old stories about Wrestler's Court backstage and JBL and The Undertaker and Simmons kind of being the guys that were the police officers for Wrestler's Court. So there's kind of a real life slant to it. I agree with you. It's not the wildest, funniest thing they've done with Otis so far. But again, it's kind of nudging the character along, and it's set up, the Hell in the Cell match.
Exactly. So at least we kind of got that going, which I'm wondering now, though, if we're going to do you think that they're going to have Miz take the Money in the Bank from Otis, though?
No, I think they're going to milk this Otis thing for as long as they can. I believe that they really see a potential star in Otis. So no, I think that he comes out on top and he vanquishes the evil Miz and he continues to go on with the briefcase. I think at some point he's going to challenge for the world title. I don't think he'll win it, but I think at some point he will. And when they do it, the crowd will explode for that, because somewhere in the back of their minds, they will be thinking he might just walk out of there with the belt.
Exactly. And when I'm thinking of like what my options really here are, it's like, okay, like you said, keep it, have Otis keep it and, use it, not just like as a prop, but as something that, like you just mentioned, like we could further along and have the people thinking like, oh, can he do it? Will he do it? Versus the Miz necessarily getting it and then challenging for it. Cause I just don't think that he sort of fits in that title picture right now.
No, I think the Miz's time there has kind of passed. He's moved on and he's doing things in Hollywood, and he's got the TV show and, a family now. I don't see the Miz ever being in that position again. I know that people have said, what about one more world title run for the Miz? But in my mind, I think he's kind of moved past that. And I'd be looking at sometime in the near future that he's probably a part-time performer and not necessarily a full-time roster member.
Yeah, especially given all the projects that he has. I mean, the guy is on everything. Miz and Mrs. He has his Cannonball TV show, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm probably even leaving out at the moment.
Dad, that's a full-time job too.
Exactly. Yes. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So we finally saw the in-ring Smackdown debut of Bianca Belair, and she faced Zelina Vega. What did you think of all of this?
Just looked like an absolute star. She came out, she's obviously just a physical specimen. I mean, a former track star and all around great athlete. She's rocking the Smackdown gear. I mean, they put a lot of hype into her, and for good reason, because to be honest with you, she could be at that main event level with people like Charlotte and Becky and Sasha and Bayley. I mean, I don't see anything that could stop this girl from being absolutely huge for this company.
Exactly. And going back to the Otis thing, we do have a comment from Chloe who says, I think Otis will keep the Money in the Bank. Come on, Otis. He's deserving of a world title opportunity. Let's go, Otis. I like Otis. I don't necessarily see him as a world champion right at this moment in time. But you know what? Go, Otis. Do your thing. And Ozzy says that Bianca killed it tonight. She really did. I mean, but she has been, though. Like, everything that she's been doing, everything that she's been how she's been presenting herself, whether it be in these, promos that they're doing, whether it be in these vignettes, whether it's the matches that we've seen her in on the main roster. She's been, each and every single time, she's been impressive, where you think like this girl is a true athlete, like not just an athlete, but like those even more superior athletes that have that, extra gift that just doesn't come naturally to everyone.
Yeah, when she pressed Zelina and then just walked around the ring with her like she was a rag doll. She had her overhead in a press slam position, and it was just, I forget about how strong Bianca is. You always think of her as her speed, and she's kind of cat-like and everything else, but she's just an all-around, again, amazing athlete, just like her husband. I've said for a long time, if she and Montez Ford they won't have children, they'll have superheroes, because they're both so physically gifted and so talented. And they even mentioned, her marriage to him tonight during the show, which I thought was interesting. So I could see her eventually being in the mix of a lot like, being the female sidekick to their tag team as well, which I think would only elevate her as well.
Right. I think the only thing that I was sort of like nitpicky about today, which wasn't really, I guess you can say, a big deal. Maybe this is because, I cover Raw on a weekly basis, and the fact that she wrestled Zelina, I was like, all right, we've already seen that. That's already what they were doing on Raw. So I was expecting a little bit more of something different for the SmackDown version of both Bianca and Zelina, respectfully. So at first, I wasn't necessarily feeling like, okay, they already did this match, whatever. But I think this was really just a nice showcase for Bianca, just to kind of be like, hey, I'm here and I'm, ready to make waves and whatnot. And she looked great. I mean, even not just like physically speaking or athletically speaking, but also in terms of like her gear and all of that. Like that was something that I saw on social media that people were, pointing out.
Yeah, she didn't look like an NXT call-up. She looked like a WWE superstar. I mean,
Exactly.
she's not even in a grace period anymore. She's made it there. She's put her stamp down, and she's a part of the main roster and going to be a big part of it.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too. Moving on, we have Lars Sullivan versus Shorty G. So I think right off the bat, we all knew what kind of match this was going to be. And surprisingly, it lasted longer than I expected. I was expecting Lars Sullivan just to kill Shorty G in this. I wasn't even expecting them to give Shorty G any sort of offense during this match. He got a little bit, right? Just like maybe a millisecond in there. But Shorty G did lose here, and he essentially then says that he quits. So before we get to the second portion of the backstage segment, what did you think of Lars Sullivan versus Shorty G?
Well, like you, I was surprised that it went as long as it did. At the same time, I mean, it's speaking of people that they're definitely putting a push behind. We just talked about Bianca, but, obviously Lars is another one of those that they're strapping a rocket to and trying to push him all the way to the moon. I'm not a big fan. You and I talked about this last week. I'm not a huge fan of Lars. I don't really see him as, again, the kind of guy you're going to put on the Tonight Show or is going to make an appearance on SportsCenter on ESPN. Obviously they're really pushing this monster heel thing. I personally, what I took out of the match that really warmed my heart was the after effects, because now we've got Chad Gable back.
Exactly.
And the real amateur star athlete, not the silly basketball player gimmick that they gave him for so long.
Exactly. Philip Shaven says, Denise, I'll say it. Freak, freak, freak. Oh, God. It was just, no, I hate it. I hate the freak. I hate the close-ups. I'm not a fan. And like you said, we discussed this last week, so I guess we won't circle back on that. But for those of you...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go for it.
Before I have any nightmares, please stop doing the close-ups of his eyes, because I'm going to lose sleep over that.
I don't know what it is. I didn't like it either.
Yeah, I mean, if that guy came knocking on my door and I looked through the peephole, there's no way I'm unlocking the door.
Yes, I feel you. I don't know if it's meant to like make you cringe. I don't know. There's just too many issues going on in that direction. But like you mentioned, we have the return of Chad Gable, and he is, backstage. He's telling Adam Pearce that he's done being Shorty G. He cuts this phenomenal promo, just basically saying that he's done. He's done. He brings in a lot of, real life things that people on social media are saying about his treatment of his character. He mentions little glimpses of that in this promo, and that there's only one man that can achieve what he really wants. And from the looks of it, he's now going by Gable alone. So I'm a fan of it.
Oh, same with me. I don't know why they ever switched him over to that silly gimmick. I think you've got right there built in. You have a kind of a miniature Kurt Angle. Another chance to have that Olympic amateur type star that you can really build around their legitimate story. You don't need to come up with something. You don't need to come up with a, reject third stringer from the local basketball court. And that's kind of what he looked like, and again, I loved the segment. I loved the passion. I mean, he obviously, it's scripted, but he delivered it as if he really meant it. He delivered it as if he's as sick of that gimmick as the rest of us are. And also, I'll say it once again, Adam Pearce is the best authority figure they've had on WWE in a long time. He plays a great neutral role, not heel, not babyface. I love him in that role as well. So that segment was definitely one of my sleeper favorites of the night. I
think so too. I completely agree with you. And I do think that a lot of what Gable said in this promo, I think a lot of it might be some, real emotions coming out there that really just help feed off of what he was saying during this promo. So really great stuff. And yeah, I completely agree with you on Pierce. He's doing an amazing job. I'm glad that this is finally happening because I've said this before, Olympians, they don't grow on trees. They're not something that you find every day, especially that you find going into WWE and, hopefully try to make a future of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you just said we didn't even have an Olympics this year, so there were no Olympians this year. But you're right. Those types of athletes. I mean, we've seen with Kurt Angle, we saw with Mark Henry. If you can play off that backstory, I mean, those guys seem to do pretty well in their careers, didn't they? I mean, and obviously they both had different gimmicks over time, Mark Henry especially, but you always had that fallback of the world's strongest man or Olympic gold medalist. Chad Gable could be another one of those guys and he could focus strictly on his technical ability and get over in that way.
I agree with you. And it would be something unique, something different that we're not really seeing right now on the roster. Rohit Nath brought up a good question, says, do you guys think that reverting back to Chad Gable is going to make an actual difference or will he be in the same role? It's a name change. That doesn't necessarily guarantee things. What do you think?
Well, I think if they took the time to film the vignette in the back and actually go through the trouble of, and granted, this is WWE and things have been known to change, but it looks to me like they purposely are putting it out there that he's at least going to go on a bit of a win streak. Now, if the fans get behind that, if there's chatter in social media about that, if people seem to be reacting to it, then I think the company will continue to go with it. But if they don't feel like there's a spark there, then yeah, he will be right back to basically doing jobs for guys like Lars.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to tell maybe because it could be like next week, they could do something great with them. The next week, maybe even that. And then who knows, maybe a month from now, this could all be forgotten. So part of me is like, okay, the fact that they removed the Shorty G, they're moving in the right direction, right? But then the other part of me is like, well, this could really last like 1 week and then we may never even hear of this again. Who knows, right? So I really hope that they do something with him because I do think, like I said, Olympians don't grow on trees. Utilize them. Amos Campbell says, was it scripted or did he really hate the character? Kind of a shoot. I think it was sort of like an influence, that they influenced this into his promo and that's what made it work really well. What do you think?
I think in a lot of those situations, the writers will take a very real life situation and even go to the performer and say, look, this is what we're going to do. And I think a lot of the stuff comes directly out of their, it's part of the conversation that takes place before something like that's shot. And I think the writers basically take a lot of their legitimate emotions and try to tie it into the character. But obviously nothing goes on in WWE that isn't absolutely approved by one and only the man, Vince McMahon. So if there was anything that came out of Gable's mouth that they didn't like, no matter how emotional he was about it, it never would have made the cut.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's just hope for the best for Gable moving forward. But let's go ahead and move on now to the Bayley and Sasha storyline. Obviously this Sunday they are going to go head to head in the Hell in a Cell. Up until tonight, Bayley still hadn't signed the contract. However, Sasha took matters into her own hands and got Bayley to sign the contract by essentially forcing her. What did you think of all of this? And are you still feeling the same momentum that you were feeling prior to all of this? Do you feel like they're going down the right path with this Bayley Sasha storyline?
I love it. I mean, even though technically it's the second biggest angle on the show right now, I would say it's the match I'm most looking forward to this weekend because of the build, because of what they've done so far with the build. I loved it. It's a kind of a role reversal. In the past, it's been Sasha who's been the heel and Bayley's always been the good girl. So it's kind of a lot of fun to see them in this position right now. I love the way they pulled it off, the way that Sasha got her to sign the contract. All the way around, I'm enjoying it. And it's really, as I said, the match I'm most looking forward to this weekend.
Do you see Bayley pulling off a win? Do you see Sasha pulling off a win? Who do you think is winning here?
I think if Sasha doesn't win, then it's an absolute waste of all these weeks and all this build. She's got to be the one that ends this record run of Bayley with the title. I think it's been set up perfectly for that way. They could totally fool me. That's why I'm kind of looking forward to the match, because other than some kind of screwy finish, I think it's going to have to be Sasha that walks out with the belt.
See, we did our Hell in a Cell predictions early in the morning, but for those of you guys who missed it, so my prediction was that Bayley is going to win. That's how I'm feeling this is going to go. And I originally had said that Bayley should have implemented into her contract that if she won this Hell in a Cell match, that Sasha shouldn't be facing her. And this was kind of my idea for, Sasha to go into the Royal Rumble and essentially, end up winning the Royal Rumble so that she would have to face Bayley eventually down the line. But I would have liked something like that. I thought it would have added a little bit more stakes to the Hell in a Cell, especially with the storyline that they're doing. I think it needs to be more unique and different from a lot of the things that we're seeing. So I still kind of see Bayley taking this win at the Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, I mean, and your scenario actually plays it out even longer. It kind of basically takes it all the way to next year's WrestleMania.
Right.
If it was a scenario where, Bayley says, this is your last shot, you got to beat me in Hell in a Cell or you don't get a shot again. And again, Sasha has to win the Rumble. I mean, then the only question is, what do you do with the two of them in between? Because you've invested so much time in them together and basically locking horns. I just, for some reason, and I hate to disagree with you because I normally don't, but I think it's blown off this weekend at Hell in a Cell. I really do think so.
So you don't think it's going all the way to WrestleMania?
No, I think Sasha kind of ends things there, and they both sort of go their separate ways for a while.
So I see, it's just so crazy to me. I think because maybe I was just so sold on the idea that this was going to be a WrestleMania match that it's kind of hard for me to say, like, maybe this is just going to be the blow off here with Hell in a Cell. And I still kind of feel like they're going to add something to it to like keep it going all the way to WrestleMania. But that's just like my prediction. But I don't necessarily know, because I think everything that I've predicted so far with the Sasha Bayley storyline has been completely wrong.
Well, I was going to say your prediction is better than mine. At least it would make for better television. But I guess knowing WWE or having watched it for so long, for some reason, I have this vibe that they're going to, I think there's going to be a lot of finality to a lot of things, a lot of finality and restarts coming out of this pay-per-view for some reason.
Right. Well, for those of you who are in the chat, feel free to let us know who you think is going to be winning, Sasha or Bayley, or any of your thoughts about SmackDown, any of your Hell in a Cell predictions. Even if you're watching the replay of this, go ahead and drop your comments in the comment section. Let's move on, though. So after this, we had Seth Rollins versus Murphy, and this was quite a lengthy match. You know what? It wasn't bad, but I wasn't expecting this match tonight, and I think this could have easily been a pay-per-view match. How did you feel about Seth and Murphy tonight?
See, this is a double-edged sword for me, because on one hand, you have two fantastic athletes who, as you said, put on a great lengthy match. But am I the only one who's just really tired of this feud? And that was the sad part, because everything you said is absolutely true. And as the match was going on, I caught myself playing with my phone and not paying attention, because I think I'm emotionally drained when it comes to these two at this point. And I wish it wasn't that way, because they are two great wrestlers. They're great athletes. It's just, I'm just kind of ready for this thing to be over. I'm ready for there to be some closure. So while everything that physically was going on in the ring was impressive, psychologically and emotionally, I'm just not invested anymore. I'm tapped out, I think.
Exactly. I agree with you in the sense, like, if it doesn't feel new, your mind tends to like, all right, we kind of already know where this is going. We already seen this play out. We've seen, variations of this. So you sort of lose interest. And I know that because that happens a lot on Raw, especially when you see so many of the same matches over and over, like you necessarily can't see everything with a new lens. Sometimes certain things just come across certain ways. But our previous question, though, we got some comments about Bayley and Sasha. Maheen says Bayley is winning, and Chloe says, I'm cut down the middle. I think Bayley and Sasha could go either way. So maybe this is one of those matches where a lot of people are really just torn apart, as there's maybe a lot of reasoning as to why people think Bayley will win, a lot of reasonings as to why they think Sasha will win, which, if anything, I think that makes the match better, don't you think?
Absolutely. There you go. It gives everybody a reason to tune in if they're that intrigued by what the finish could possibly be. And that's what wrestling used to be about. Us not knowing and it seems like now it's so overanalyzed, and we by the time the match gets there, we're already all burned out. We've already made up our minds on if it's going to be good or if it's going to be bad, who's going to win, who's going to lose. That's one that, right now could be a coin toss.
Yeah, I agree. I think overanalyze is like the perfect way to say it. And going back to Seth and Murphy, Amos Campos says Murphy has so much talent. Yes, I agree with that. But at the same time, like I said, this match could have been on a pay-per-view. The fact that they had this match on SmackDown sort of slots Murphy in the fact of like, oh, he's not at that level to be having this match at a pay-per-view, but instead we're going to have it on SmackDown. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree. Well, first of all, I would agree that it was definitely a pay-per-view. In terms of the wrestling quality, it's definitely a pay-per-view level match. My most disappointing part was the very end. I want to see Murphy get this win over Seth. I don't know what it's going to take, if it's going to have to happen on a pay-per-view. But, again, it's kind of one of those ones I want to see some closure to it, and I want to see Murphy come out on top because Seth's a made man. He doesn't need to win. But winning a feud against Seth Rollins would be huge for Murphy in his career.
Yeah, and the fact that Seth Rollins won tonight gets me thinking, all right, we're going to still see more of this until eventually, because it sort of feels like the Murphy, Aaliyah romance with the, Rey Mysterio family drama. It kind of feels like that is sort of still on the brinks of its commencement. It still doesn't feel like we're, going towards an ending here. I think this is going to go on a lot longer.
Oh, I think it's going to take us into Christmas, to be honest with you. I think that it's another one of those. They've obviously moved this storyline to SmackDown for a reason. They feel like it's going to do well with viewers, especially in prime time on network television. It's something that, again, it's right now, the three biggest angles in my mind in WWE are happening on SmackDown, and that's Sasha and Bayley. It's the one we'll talk about at the very end, and this angle. So, I mean, right now, I feel like they're going to ride this thing out as long as they can. I don't mind the Mysterio saga as much as, again, I'd like to see Murphy get past Rollins and move on to some other opponents so we can really see what he's like now that he's getting pushed to that level.
Yeah, exactly. We get to, uncover what else does Murphy have, what else? And we already know he's great in the ring. But again, what's next for him? What else? And I know a lot of people aren't necessarily fans of this, Murphy, Aaliyah, Mysterio storyline. I don't know if I said this last week, but I don't hate it. Like, I don't hate it. I think a lot of people really dislike it, but I'm not there. I don't feel that. I don't feel that strongly about hating it.
Yeah, I don't know what the age difference is between the two of them. To me, it's kind of creepy. I don't know why, but every time I see that, it just seems like, because she just 19, seems so young to me.
Like, I don't know how old Murphy is actually.
But at the same time, you also, again, with segments we talked about earlier, as a wrestling fan, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. You have to take it as this is part of the show. This is part of the entertainment. And you never know, down the road, we may find out she's not this innocent girl and she's setting him up for failure. That's the way the breaks go in pro wrestling. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully Murphy gets a chance to be, they get a chance to play out this storyline. He gets a chance to be a babyface for a while. He gets out of the Seth Rollins shadow, and we see where this all turns out at the end. We find out who turns on who in the end. That's how every great storyline ends.
Exactly. All right, so let's go ahead. Oh, wait, we didn't talk about the fact that, we kind of did, but I'll just mention it really quickly. So after the match, Seth Rollins is about to attack Murphy with the kendo stick, and Aaliyah comes out, and, Seth does get a couple of, shots on Murphy, but as he stops once Aaliyah gets into the ring, her brother Dominic comes out, and he basically tells her, this is none of our business. We have nothing to do with this. And Ray comes out, and I mean, it's this whole family drama. The ending scene is literally Aaliyah holding on to Murphy. So they are definitely going, if anybody was wondering if they were going to be friends or if this was going to be a romance, I think after this, you should definitely know that it is a romance.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, how naive is the family when they don't realize that's her boyfriend? It's obvious.
Do you think so? Because it might just be like, I don't know, because they haven't necessarily came out and said it.
Well, I don't know. It just seems like if I was her father and she was holding on to a guy like that, I would be pretty clued in that maybe there's something going on there.
And you're a father, so I'm going to take your word for that.
With 4 daughters, so yeah, believe me, I don't get a lot of sleep at night.
Oh my God.
Oh, and before we go on,
dominance.
one major shout out to Ray. Those yellow kicks tonight were pretty. He was rocking some pretty cool tennis shoes. Ray's always got the cool gear for a guy my age.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back and look because I didn't notice his tennis shoes tonight. So I'm going to have to go and check that out. But let's go ahead and talk about Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. Like we've talked about, this is probably one of the best storylines that we are seeing right now in WWE, not just SmackDown, but in the whole company in general. So this was kind of a lot went down in the last few minutes of SmackDown. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight it really quick. We had Jimmy appear. So Roman Reigns comes out, but then we had Jimmy appear on screen. He's sitting in front of a table, what looks to be like his home or something. And he has some food in front of him. And he's basically talking about how Roman, turned on his family. And then afterwards, Jey ends up attacking Roman from behind. So they use this as a distraction. This was really quick. It was effective, but at the same time, afterwards, we had a little bit of a new thing added to this. So after the attack, Roman Reigns told Jimmy and Jey that this is more than just becoming, the tribal chief, becoming the champion, but the fact that their family would necessarily turn on them depending on the outcome of this match. And then they end the show with a stare down with the Hell in a Cell right between them. How did you feel about all of this?
I'm loving it. Again, you can say maybe, or it could be. No, this is the best storyline in WWE right now, bar none. And it's been great for Roman as far as his heel turn. Lots of intrigue on what's going to come of I almost said the Russos, the Usos. After all this, are they going to all end up together in one super group? This is as someone who has been a lame duck WWE fan at times, where I've tuned out for weeks at a time because they've just turned me away. This is another storyline that, while I don't expect anything but Roman to come out victorious at Hell in a Cell, I'm still intrigued by the way they've done this, by the way they pulled in the family connection. And again, it's just, to me right now, it's the number one storyline in WWE.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they've been doing a lot of really great stuff with this. Philip also agrees, says greatest storyline ever. I wouldn't necessarily say ever, but I will say that it is a really good one, though. I wasn't necessarily that crazy about the fact that they were saying that the whole family was going to turn on them and stuff like that. I kind of thought that made it kind of took me out of it a little bit, because it's like, how do you enforce something like that? How do you keep up with something like that? I don't feel like you really do. But nonetheless, I am still excited. I think I'm more excited for the fact that I think we're all expecting this grand beatdown, this, really evil Roman Reigns at Hell in a Cell, where he's just going to brutalize Jey. And I think in our prediction show, we had our viewers, they were predicting that they think that Roman is going to throw Jey off the cell. And if he does, that will really, really make him into, a really strong heel, somebody that would go that far to do something like that, somebody that's part of their family.
I hadn't even thought about that possibility. I because of the submission move that he used last week, I was thinking we might get into one of those situations where he locks Jey in the submission hold. Jey won't quit. He won't say I quit. And then Roman just basically tortures him, until they stop the match. But at the same time, I hate to say this for poor Jey, but I do kind of like the idea of him getting thrown off the cage.
I do too. Isn't that a terrible thing to say?
Awful.
But you know what, though? It's wrestling, and I think the fans, they tend to expect stuff like this, especially at a Hell in a Cell match. Let's see, what are you guys thinking? I think we all know Roman Reigns is going to win, but Chloe Metting says she is pulling for Jey Uso. Let's just say, in an alternative world, that Jey Uso were to win this Hell in a Cell match, which I don't think so, but let's just throw it out there for fun. Would you want to see that, or would it just be completely shocking?
I wouldn't want to see it, but if it did happen by some, whatever logic that they used, then you have to have a completely berserk Roman. Roman has to just lose his mind at that point. He's not just this cerebral heel anymore. Now he's gone mad because he's lost to his little cousin. But No, I just, as far as I would love, emotionally, obviously you want to get behind the good guy, the hero, which is Jey in this situation. But in terms of the storyline and where they are going forward, and especially with as strong as they've been making Roman look, I would bet the farm that Reigns comes out with the title, and that it helps develop this storyline in a whole new way.
Yeah, I agree too. But I mean, I would be completely shocked. It would be something that I wouldn't expect. I wouldn't necessarily hate it just because it would surprise me. And see, I'm a fan of stuff that surprise me because I think so many times, like you said, we spend so much time analyzing wrestling, analyzing the matches, what we think is going to happen. So when I'm pleasantly surprised and something happens that I didn't expect, even if maybe it's not like the greatest thing in the world, I do like the idea of the element of surprise. I'm a fan of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can, and I hate to use the word swerve because it's so overused, but anytime you can shock the fans, that shock value in pro wrestling is something that's sorely missed. Again, we talked about overanalyzing things. There's very little things that happen because there's so many theories and so many things that leak from backstage that many times when we get to a big match, again, as I said, we've analyzed it to the point where we almost know what to expect. So when you get thrown the unexpected, it kind of gives you those old, those goosebumps back like you had when you were a young fan.
Exactly. I agree. Well, I mean, that is pretty much our show for today. We sort of ran through everything that happened on SmackDown. Overall, I would say it was a decent show. It wasn't bad at all. But like you said, I am a little bit curious as to how the ratings are going to be considering that they were on FS1. And usually when they move over to anytime any show moves over to another channel, you definitely see a ratings dip there. But I do think that this is a SmackDown for people to, if they didn't watch live, to sort of go back and actually watch.
Yeah, and again, that's to be expected. FS1 is not available in nearly as many homes as the main Fox network is. So obviously they're going to have a dip in ratings this week. But, I think the more substantive part of the show is, did they help build this pay-per-view? Did they give people who are undecided a reason to plunk their money down or get the network this weekend? And I would say if that's the way you're grading them, then you got to give them a B+ to an A, because they did a lot of good things at this last show heading into Hell in a Cell, I thought.
Yep, I agree with that. Ryan, that is our show for today. Everybody, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, Ryan Boman is filling in for Rick Ucchino. But before we go, Ryan, I want to thank you so much for coming back for a second week and taking time out of your day to come do this post show with me. It has truly been a lot of fun. And I will text you after this and tell you that I had a great time, because I truly did last week and this week. But before we go, where can people find you on social media or anything you'd like to plug in?
You can find me on Twitter at Ryan K. Bowman, just like it says down there on the screen. On Facebook, Ryan K. Bowman. And every Monday with the Power of the Pin column, talking a little pro wrestling over at sportskeeda.com.
Awesome. Guys, you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at _ Denise Salcedo. Once again, you see my name on the screen. Just add an underscore in front of it and you'll find me on Twitter and Instagram. And if you haven't already, check me out on YouTube, youtube.com/Denise Salcedo. I will be doing a post recap show of Hell in a Cell on my YouTube channel. But other than that, we thank you so much for tuning in to Smack Talk, and we will see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.